Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm a journalist author. I was about to say I'm not the singer because a lot of people still ask me that, and I do wish that chap hadn't stolen my name. I'm a journalist, author, interviewer, and broadcaster. But I also happen to be a lifelong fan of Richard Harris, at least since first hearing MacArthur Park in June 1968, and soon afterwards buying the album A Tramp Shining. And someone who, 30 years later, and think about this if you're a fan of anyone, was asked by Richard, his old hero, to become his official biographer. That book, Richard Harris Raising Hell and Reaching for Heaven, is now available from Amazon and wherever you order your hardback books. As for this next clip, as with a podcast I'll post later as a kind of follow-up flip side, comes from a radio show Richard and I made in 2001 about his musical career and his poetry. It's also part of what I call, in my podcast series, a single, because it runs for less than 5 minutes. Fittingly enough in this case, because Richard and I are talking about the Jimmy Webb composition, Didn't We?, which he and I, and millions of people, maybe you, love deeply. But be warned, if you're a Jimmy Webb fan, this is not how Webb necessarily tells the tale of the genesis of the song. And here I must point out, as I do in my book, that Richard could be, let's say, flexible when it came to facts. Either way, on August the 8th, 2001, this is the version of the story of Didn't We he chose to tell his future biographer.
Yeah, Richard, you just mentioned that you had met. When you met Jim Webb, he had the song MacArthur Park, which he was failing to place with somebody else. So it was probably the least personal track on A Tramp Shining, which he subsequently wrote for you, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Yeah. What happened was he wrote a lot of the songs for me on the album. Most of them, actually, for me on the album. Down in my house when I was doing Camelot. I had a house in Bel Air, and we were there for so long, and one night to get away in the weekends, and I took a little sort of shack, rented a little shack down in Malibu, and I put a piano in there and a spinet, and Jim went down to write the album there. He lies about a lot of his stuff, Jim. He said that Didn't We wasn't written for me, and that's not true. Unless of course he deceived me. It is very possible. It's within his character to deceive me. Because I told him the story of my life, and he would write a number. And then we were down actually in Malibu, and I told him about Elizabeth and how we met and so forth, etc. And it was a everybody thought it was a relationship that was made in heaven, and all of a sudden it fell to pieces, and I misbehaved, and the whole thing fell to pieces. And Jim said, and I said, I'm going to go for a walk. I had a girlfriend down there then. I'm going to go for a walk. And I went for a walk. And I came back. And Jim was tickling away at the piano. He said, I think I have a song here, he said. And suddenly he said, listen. And I was gone for about an hour and a half. And I came back. And he said, listen to this. I've just written this. He said, for you, Elizabeth. This time we almost made the pieces fit, didn't we, girl? Now, he could have been lying to me. He could have written it 5 years before and then pretended he wrote it there and then. But that is absolutely accurate. He said, listen to this. And he began to finger away. Because he didn't even have the lyrics. This time we almost made the pieces fit, didn't we, girl? He got da-da-da-dee-dee-da-da-da-da-dum, didn't we, girl? Da-da. He hadn't the lyrics. They were still coming into his head.
He could still have been a great actor.
What he could have been.
But also, Richard, you say the pieces didn't fit because you were walking on the beach with another woman when your marriage was falling apart.
Oh, it was gone by then.
Was it gone by then?
It was, yeah. We weren't quite divorced yet, but it was gone by then, yeah.
All right. Okay, so you still, and I'm going to play Didn't We?
Okay.
Because after the story, it's still quite a beautiful and resonant song that many other people have since sung, including Mr. Sinatra.
Sinatra did it, Tony Bennett did it, Sammy Davis did it.
Sinatra.
Sorry?
Go on. When Sinatra did Didn't We in the Royal Festival Hall, am I misremembering?
No,
did he drop the word girl and also get a dig at you and say that ought to break his heart or something?
No, he used to dig at me all the time. He used to say, he said, every time I play Richard Harris's album, he said, I think that his vocal coach must have been the same coach of Margaret Truman. Do you remember the thing? She was a disaster. Do you remember Harry Truman's daughter? Must have been Margaret, the same coach as Margaret Truman. He said, he was always having a go at me, Frank.
All right, but this is the original version of didn't we? Written for, perhaps, Richard Harris.
Perhaps.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. My book is called Richard Harris, Raising Hell and Reaching for Heaven. And if you want to read some of my articles, check out my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com.